separate, no. Even if I ran away, your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have new mercy for me every day. 'Cause your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Wind is strong and the water's deep now. I'm not alone here in these open seas, 'cause your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side, 'cause your love never fails. 'Cause you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Your You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. All things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Your love never fails. Your love never fails.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first Sunday service of this new year. I'm really glad you're here today because we're kicking off the new year with a series called The Path. Now, this series is based on a book written by Andy Stanley called The Principle of the Path: How to Get from Where You Are to Where You Want to Be. I think this is such an appropriate subtitle considering that many of us will be setting goals and making resolutions for the new year. My guess is that in some ways, we all want to be somewhere else in 2021, at least metaphorically speaking. Members of the South Sound Church of Christ will remember that we began last year with the theme of revision. Of course, in January of last year, we had no idea that there would be a pandemic or that we would be faced with a crisis of culture and political divisions, each of which would challenge the world and the church in ways that I'm sure we never expected. But I hope that in 2021, our experience has taught us wisdom. I pray that as we continue to reimagine and revision our lives and our future individually and collectively this year, that we might give even more careful consideration to the choices we make and the paths we take. The theme for each week's sermon will be taken from the book of Proverbs. So before we begin, let's, take a minute and get a little bit of background. Scholars call the book of Proverbs, as well as Job, Psalms, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, wisdom literature. When we think about wisdom, if we ask a person, what does it mean to be wise? Most people say it means that someone knows a lot. We believe that a person who has wisdom knows what to do in various situations. But we also know that a person can be smart and not be wise. And so the book of Proverbs is really a book of moral and ethical instructions that deals with many aspects of life. Its purpose is to teach us how to lead wise, godly lives and how to avoid the consequences of ungodly conduct. It was written primarily by King Solomon, who is said to be one of the wisest men who ever lived in 1 Kings chapter 4. In fact, it says there in verse 32. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He spoke about plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He spoke about animals and birds, reptiles and fish from all nations. People came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. Today Solomon would probably have a recording deal for all his songs. He'd probably have several PhDs in philosophy, zoology, ornithology, herpetology, ichthyology, and a few other ologies that I didn't even have time to look up today. Now that we've got some background, I want to introduce our focus for today. Today we're going to learn the principle of the path. In fact, here's something I'm pretty sure we've all learned from our own real life experience when it comes to paths. The road you're on determines where you'll end up. Now, I believe that's true, isn't it? If you live in Tacoma, Washington, which is where I live and most of you watching live, then you know that if I head north on the I-5 from Tacoma and I just keep on driving north, eventually I'll end up in Canada. Now, I could get in my car and put on my shorts and my sunglasses with every hope of spending a week in Cabo. But if I head north instead of south, I'm going to end up in Canada, not Baja. I'm sure you get the point. Whatever road or highway I'm on, whatever path I choose will ultimately determine where I end up. So here's the principle of the path. Your direction, not your intention, determines your destination. Let me say that again. Your direction, not your intention, determines your destination. Now, geographically, this is pretty obvious, right? But it's the same principle when it comes to the rest of our lives too. Whether it's our family life or our finances, our marriage, our dating life, the way we raise our kids, our physical fitness, even our professional life. In every area of life, my direction, not my intention, will determine my destination. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how determined you are. It doesn't matter how slick you are, how clever. It doesn't matter how nice you are or how much money you've got. The path you choose will ultimately determine where you end up. Now, before I go too far, I want to be completely honest here. I do believe that there are times when we end up on a path that we didn't choose because it was the only road available. I don't have time to really unpack that today, but I still think that this principle will apply to most of us who are listening today. And so as we begin, let me show you this principle from what Solomon wrote 3,000 years ago in the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 7, beginning in about verse 6, Solomon is about to tell us a story. Now, we don't know whether it's a true story or one that he made up so that he could demonstrate this principle. But as he tells us the story, he's standing at a window and he's looking down at the street. And beginning in verse 6, it says, "At the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple. I noticed among the young men a youth who had no sense. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in." Now, you don't have to be a Bible scholar to anticipate where this story is heading, do you? You know, this young dude is cruising the streets at sunset. It's getting dark. He's heading in the direction of some woman's home. Verse 8 says he was going down the street near her corner. He was headed towards her house. And we don't have to know who her is to know that this is not going to be good. You know, Solomon was watching from a distance. He was looking from his window. He could see this kid was headed in the wrong direction, and he knew that the path this particular young man was on, like every path, was leading somewhere. Solomon, I believe, is trying to tell us that this path has a predictable destination. In fact, from the outside looking in, it's so predictable that we probably don't even need to read the rest of the story to predict the outcome. You know, I think it's kind of funny how that works. Have you ever been headed down a road that your friends or your family was trying to warn you about? Maybe even that inner voice was trying to get your attention, but you couldn't see it until it was too late? That's happened to me way too many times. Or you ever try to warn somebody about going down a road and they couldn't see it? You see, I think many of the paths that we choose have a predictable destination, and wisdom can guide us if we choose it. Even though the story is predictable, I want to continue reading anyway. Amen. Our next verse says, "Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She's loud and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner, she lurks. She took hold of him and kissed him with a brazen face. She said, 'I have fellowship offerings at home. Today I fulfilled my vows. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and I have found you.'" You know, one of the first things I think we notice about this woman is that she was dressed to seduce him. She was trying to get his attention. Her intentions were crafty. I think there's so many things that are trying to get our attention these days. Let me just start with the internet. You know, I just watched a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. Man, have you seen that? It's all about how the internet and social media in particular is designed to get as much of your time and attention as possible. And listen, I promise I'm not going to get on a soapbox about social media, but I will say that we need to be wise and intentional about what and how much we give our attention to. This woman, when she said she had fellowship offerings at home, she was basically saying, look, I've got plenty of money. I'm not after your money. I want you. And at that point, even if Solomon had yelled down from the window to warn this young man, there's no way this kid would have heard him over the seductive words that we're going to read next. "I've covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I've Perfume my body with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. Wow. You know, this reminds me of one year me and a friend of mine were headed home from college. We were making the long drive from Louisiana to Denver. It's a pretty long drive, but as we were getting close to Amarillo, Texas, we saw a sign that said Las Vegas. We had no idea we were even close to Las Vegas. We had to go. So we thought about it for all of about 15 seconds, and we decided that we were going to take the detour. We figured it only put us a couple of hours off of our course, but it would be worth it because we were about to go to Vegas. So we continued down the road. We saw signs that said Las Vegas, 120 miles, 90 miles, 50 miles. We were so excited. Las Vegas, 20 miles. Las Vegas, 5 miles. But something wasn't right. We didn't see any lights. I thought for sure we'd see lights from, at least 5 miles away. But the road and everything around it was honestly just black. But by that time, we'd gone so far and we were so close. So we just kept on going, expecting to see the Strip any minute. And then finally we arrived in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Oh, man, we were so disappointed. I couldn't believe how foolish we'd been. We couldn't believe we didn't know our geography a little bit better. But the lure of Las Vegas was more than we could resist. Fortunately for us, it just cost us about 4 hours out of our time and about another half tank of gas, but it could have been so much worse. That was one of the first times I remembered something my mom used to say all the time. Everything that glitters ain't gold. I think unfortunately for the young men in our story and for many, many people today, the cost is so much greater than that. Solomon saw this situation from an entirely different perspective. He saw it from the perspective of wisdom. Listen to what he says next. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once, he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Wow, now just in case you didn't get the ox to the slaughter analogy, how about a deer stepping into a noose with an arrow through the liver? Or a clueless bird flying right into a snare? You see, from the place of wisdom where Solomon is sitting, he can see this young man walking right into a trap. And then in verse 24, Solomon turns a corner and he addresses a broader audience. In fact, these next words are addressed directly to you and me. It says, "Now then, my sons and daughters, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she's brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death." Wow, did you see it? You see, this wasn't just a single event. It was a path he chose. And my guess is that this wasn't the first time he didn't show the wisdom of restraint. In fact, the reality is that throughout our lives, there are little choices we make that shape our character. Paths we take that determine our destination. The fact is that there's nothing unique about this story. In 1 Corinthians 10:13, Paul writes, "The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he'll show you a way out so that you can endure." The Bible tells us that the things we're tempted with are common. When I get angry, or when I feel lonely, when I'm hungry or tired, aren't these the places in my heart where temptations begin? And don't we all get tempted in this way? But when you're tempted, the Bible says there is a way out. So how did the young man end up on the wrong path, and how do we end up on the wrong path? I believe there was a disconnect. In fact, I believe, like many of us, he wanted to feel good or be happy. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to feel loved and accepted. He wanted to be known by someone. Maybe he just wanted to be wanted. You know, there's a term called cognitive dissonance. It refers to the internal conflict that occurs when a person's behaviors and their values and beliefs don't line up. For example, you know, a husband or wife may be experiencing cognitive dissonance when they believe in the value and the sanctity of marriage, but fall in love with a coworker and begin an affair. And then they reason that the affair is okay because they haven't been happy in the marriage for some time and they deserve to be happy. You know, I've seen these kind of disconnects from my imaginary window, and I'll bet you have too. I believe this proverb is a metaphor, and this woman is a metaphor for many of the paths that we come to in life that have the potential to lead us to places that we never intended to go. For example, there are financial or money paths. The choices that we make with money can often set us on a course that leads to debt and destruction. There are relational paths that we take. In fact, I think 2020 brought some challenges to the way that we think about politics and what loving one another as disciples with different thoughts and ideals and experiences in this world is going to look like from this point forward. How will we love each other in the way that Christ calls us to? And I could go on and on. Right now, you may be thinking about several people who should hear this sermon today, but before you start putting names to the faces in your mind, take a minute to think about your own life, and let me ask you this. Are there disconnects in your life? Are there discrepancies between what you desire and value in your heart and what you're doing with your life? Is there alignment between your intentions and the direction that you're taking? See, the principle of the path is operating in your life every minute of every day. You're currently on a financial path of some sort. You're on a relational path. You're on a moral path, an ethical path. And each of these paths has a destination. So how do we learn to choose the right path? Well, I want to give you a couple of answers for that. The first I would say is get wisdom. And that's where we're going to be going for the next several weeks, getting wisdom from Solomon and wisdom from the book of Proverbs. You know, reading Proverbs will definitely increase your wisdom quotient. There are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, so maybe start by reading a chapter a day for the next 31 days. But another way that we can choose the right path is to make sure that we stay connected or get connected or reconnect with Christ. 2 Peter 1, beginning in verse 2 says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. And because of his glory and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. These are the promises that enable you to share his divine nature and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. Amen. And finally, we need to make choices based on the long-term, not short-term thinking. In Titus 2, we read, for the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age while we wait for the blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. You know, sometimes we need to make short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. Understand this, your life is more like a path and a series of steps, not just a bunch of accumulated, unrelated events. We need to think about what will happen if you honor God with your money or if you balance your checkbook and save every month. Think about what will happen if you pray every morning and encourage your spouse before you go to work every day. Think about what will happen if you post that thought or send that text. Consider making choices based on what will develop if you do something over a long period of time, because that's the path you're on every time you make a one-time decision. Whenever we choose Jesus, we choose the path of wisdom when we choose his ways. And if you decide you're going to change pass or make a course correction, you'll probably encounter some challenges. But I also think that you'll find that as you pursue the new and better path, the momentum you build will not only help you, but it'll help a lot of people you really care about as well. Brothers and sisters, as we enter into 2021 together, let's determine to walk in the way of Jesus. Let's remember to be more like Jesus and more for others. We know that there are many paths that we can choose from, but wisdom is found in Jesus Christ. There will likely be as many distractions in 2021 as there were this year, but it's never too late to choose the path of wisdom. I look forward to walking together with you all in 2021. God bless you all, and Happy New Year.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was child of God. Yes, I am.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope it's something that has been helpful in preparing you spiritually for the week to come. Please continue to follow us online, southsoundcoc.org, or you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. We're always here to serve you. If you need to talk to our staff or elders for any reason, please find us online at the Contact Us page or the Next Steps page. We'd be happy to help as much as we can. For any of our members or people who want to contribute financially, you can go to our website and click on the Give button. That will take you to the Tithely app so we can continue to be faithful in our giving. For all of the kids out there, we're creating new content and posting it to our virtual Kids Corner. Please tune in, especially on Sundays, to see what we have for the kids. Until next week, stay safe and keep the faith. New year, new video.